Wyoming Territory, 1875. The distant peal of thunder rolled across the prairie as the skies darkened over Sweetwater Springs. Cole Weston pulled his hat lower to shield against the coming storm, his lean silhouette a lone figure against the wild landscape. At 24, he had already earned respect among the seasoned cowboys at the Rockingham Ranch, but the hard lines around his eyes spoke of a man who had learned frontier lessons early. "Another day, another dollar," he muttered, guiding his chestnut mare toward town. The notion of stopping by the newly opened general store flickered briefly in his mind before he dismissed it. What was the point? A cowboy's life was meant for open ranges and cattle drives, not settled comforts or companionship. The war had claimed his father, and the harsh winter of '68 had taken his mother. Since then, Cole had drifted from ranch to ranch, never staying long enough to form attachments. He told himself it was the cowboy way, freedom above all else. But beneath that well-worn belief lay a deeper truth. The frontier had taught him that caring for others only meant more pain when they inevitably left, one way or another. What Cole wanted was straightforward enough: earn enough money this season to buy his own small spread, a place where he answered to no one. What he needed, though he'd sooner wrangle a rattlesnake than admit it, was something to fill the hollow ache that consumed him during the long, silent nights under the stars. As the first heavy raindrops began to fall, Cole spurred his horse toward town. No sense getting drenched when shelter was within reach. The buildings of Sweetwater Springs appeared through the misty rain, promising temporary refuge at least. The sound of raised voices cut through the rain as Cole approached the main street. Outside the Mercantile, a small crowd had gathered despite the weather. At the center stood a young woman, her honey-blonde hair darkening in the rain, her blue dress becoming sodden as she faced down a red-faced older man. "I tell you, I saw nothing improper," the young woman insisted, her voice trembling but determined. "Mr. Patterson simply offered to help me reach the upper shelf." The older man, whom Cole recognized as Josiah Thornton, the town's self-appointed moral guardian, pointed an accusatory finger. "Alone in the storeroom with a man not your husband? What would your poor departed father say, Miss Winters? Such behavior cannot be tolerated in a respectable town." Cole reined in his horse, intending to pass by the uncomfortable scene. The girl's reputation was none of his concern, but something in her defiant stance, the way she stood her ground despite the tears gathering in her eyes, made him pause. "The whole town knows what kind of woman allows herself such liberties," Thornton continued, his voice carrying down the muddy street. "No decent man will have you now." She was young, perhaps 20 at most, with features that would have been striking even without the flush of indignation coloring her cheeks. Cole could see her hands trembling at her sides, though her chin remained high. "Miss Winters has done nothing wrong," the shopkeeper, Patterson, protested weakly from behind her. "This is a misunderstanding." "Is it? Then why did Mrs. Lawson see you with your hands upon her person?" Thornton challenged. Before Cole realized what he was doing, he had dismounted and was striding through the rain toward the gathering. "What seems to be the trouble here?" he asked, stepping between the young woman and her accuser. "This is town business, cowboy," Thornton snapped. "Move along." The girl glanced at Cole, surprise replacing fear in her clear green eyes. He noticed a small scar above her right eyebrow, a tiny imperfection that somehow made her beauty more authentic. "Miss Winters, is it?" Cole asked, tipping his hat to her. "I believe we had an appointment this afternoon. I apologize for my tardiness." Confusion flickered across her face before understanding dawned. "Yes, of course," she said, her voice steadying. "I was beginning to worry you wouldn't come." Cole turned to Thornton, whose face had purpled further. "Sir, I fail to see the issue. Miss Winters was simply conducting business while awaiting my arrival." "And who might you be?" Thornton demanded. Cole straightened to his full height, suddenly aware of the mud on his boots and the trail dust on his clothes. "Cole Weston, sir. I ride for the Rockingham." He paused, then added the words that would forever change his life. "And I'm Miss Winters' fiancé." A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. The young woman's eyes widened, but to her credit, she didn't contradict him. "Fiancé?" Thornton sputtered. "I've heard nothing of this engagement." "We've been keeping it quiet," Cole improvised, "until her period of mourning for her father passed. Wouldn't be respectful otherwise." The rain intensified, but nobody moved. Cole offered his arm to the young woman, who took it with only slight hesitation. "If you'll excuse us, Miss Winters and I have matters to discuss. Unless there's some other accusation you'd like to make against my future wife." Thornton's mouth opened and closed, but no words emerged. The crowd began to disperse, mumbling and casting glances back at the unexpected couple. Cole led the young woman toward the shelter of the mercantile's covered porch. Once they were alone, she released his arm and turned to face him. "Why did you do that?" she asked directly, wringing water from her skirt. Cole removed his hat, suddenly uncomfortable under her scrutiny. "Seemed like you could use a hand. Town folks can be quick to judge. Do you realize what you've done?" She pushed back a strand of wet hair. "You've claimed an engagement. That's not something easily walked back in a place like Sweetwater Springs." "I didn't think that far ahead," Cole admitted. "I'm Cole Weston, by the way, though I suppose you gathered that." "Celia Winters," she replied, studying him with intelligent eyes. "I'm 20 years old, new to town, and apparently now engaged to a man I've never met." There was a hint of humor in her voice that surprised him. "I can ride out tomorrow," Cole offered. "Tell folks it didn't work out between us. Your reputation would still be intact." Celia shook her head. "It wouldn't matter. Once Thornton sets his mind against someone, particularly a woman alone, the damage is done." She sighed, looking out at the rain-soaked street. "My father's only been gone 3 months. I came here to take over his claim after he died suddenly. These people barely know me, and now." Cole shifted uncomfortably. He'd acted on impulse, something he rarely did. The smart play would be to extract himself from this situation immediately. The last thing he needed was entanglement with a land claim and a woman with reputation troubles. Yet something about her solitary struggle resonated with him. "What if," he began slowly, "we maintain the engagement for a while, just until the gossip dies down? Then we could quietly part ways." Celia looked at him sharply. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "I've been on the wrong side of small-town judgment before," Cole said. "Besides, I'll be working at the Rocking M through fall roundup at least. Wouldn't cost me anything to play the part when I'm in town." Thunder crashed overhead as Celia considered his offer. Finally, she extended her hand as if to seal a business arrangement. "Very well, Mr. Weston. It seems I have a temporary fiancé." Cole took her small hand in his, struck by how this simple touch, the first human contact he'd had in weeks beyond rough handshakes, sent an unexpected warmth through him. "But," she added firmly, "I won't have you feeling obligated. This is merely a convenient fiction, nothing more. Come fall, we'll announce a change of heart, and you'll be free to move on as planned." Cole nodded, telling himself that's exactly what he wanted. No complications, no roots. Just a good deed that would cost him nothing but a few social niceties. He couldn't have known how completely wrong he was. The following Sunday found Cole clean-shaven and uncomfortably dressed in his one good shirt, escorting Celia to church services. They had agreed that public appearances were necessary to make their engagement believable, starting with the most visible social gathering in town. "You look like you'd rather face a stampede," Celia whispered as they approached the white-clapboard building. She wore a simple blue dress that complemented her eyes, her blonde hair neatly arranged beneath a modest hat. "Give me the stampede," Cole muttered, nodding stiffly to several curious onlookers. "At least I'd know what to do." Celia laughed softly, a sound that caught Cole by surprise. "Just follow my lead, and try not to look like you're being marched to the gallows." Inside the church, their entrance caused a ripple of whispers. Cole guided Celia to an empty pew, acutely aware of every eye upon them. When the service ended, they were immediately surrounded by townspeople, some genuinely welcoming, others clearly fishing for gossip. "Such a surprise, your engagement," said Mrs. Lawson, the same woman who had apparently started the trouble at the mercantile. "How did you two meet?" Cole froze, realizing they hadn't prepared a story. Before he could stumble through an answer, Celia slipped her hand into his. "We met last spring when Cole delivered cattle to my father's ranch near Laramie," she said smoothly. "We corresponded after I moved here to manage father's claim. When Cole took work at the Rocking M, well..." She glanced up at him with such convincing affection that Cole almost believed it himself. It seemed like Providence. "How romantic," sighed the banker's wife. "And when is the happy day?" "Not until after fall roundup," Cole found himself saying. "I want to have something saved up before we marry." Celia squeezed his hand in approval, and Cole was struck by how natural it felt to stand beside her, their fingers intertwined as they faced the curious town together. After church, Cole walked Celia to the small cabin she had inherited from her father, located on the outskirts of town beside a promising plot of land. "You handled that well," she said as they reached her door, "though you looked ready to bolt when Mrs. Lawson mentioned the wedding date." "I'm not much for play acting," Cole admitted. "Never saw the need for it." Celia studied him for a moment. "No, I don't imagine you would. You strike me as a man who says exactly what he means." "Most times," Cole agreed. "Frontier doesn't leave much room for pretense." "Is that why you're alone?" she asked, then immediately looked regretful. "Forgive me, that was too forward." Cole leaned against the porch railing, considering her question more seriously than he might have expected. "The way I see it, the frontier's no place for permanent attachments. Folks die, move on, or change. Better to depend only on yourself." "That sounds lonely," Celia observed quietly. Cole shrugged. "It's simpler." "Is it?" She opened her door, then paused. "Would you like to come in for coffee? As a thank you for today." Everything in Cole urged him to decline, to maintain the distance that had protected him for years. But the genuine warmth in her invitation made refusal feel unnecessarily harsh. "Coffee would be welcome," he said. Inside, the cabin was modest but neat, with signs of Celia's efforts to make it a home. Carefully tended plants sat in the window, and colorful quilts brightened the simple furniture. "It's not much," she said, seeming to read his thoughts as she prepared the coffee. "But it's mine, free and clear. Father left no debts, just this cabin and the claim." "You plan to work the land yourself?" Cole couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. "I do," she answered firmly. "Father taught me everything he knew about farming and ranching. I helped him build a successful operation near Laramie before he sold it to move here." She handed Cole a steaming cup. "Does that surprise you so much?" "Most women would be looking for a husband to take over," Cole said. "Is that what you think our arrangement should be?" Celia challenged, her green eyes sharp. "That you'll actually claim my land along with my hand?" "No," Cole said quickly. "That wasn't what I meant. I just haven't met many women with your determination." Celia's expression softened. "My father raised me to be independent. After Mother died when I was 12, he said he never wanted me to feel helpless." She sat across from him. "What about your family?" Cole stared into his coffee. "Lost my father at Chancellorsville. Mother to pneumonia a few years later." "I'm sorry," Celia said simply. "It was a long time ago." Cole changed the subject. "What crops are you planning to plant?" As Celia outlined her plans for the land, Cole found himself genuinely interested. She spoke with knowledge and passion about crop rotation, water management, and livestock integration that impressed him. By the time he left, the afternoon was waning, and he had somehow agreed to help her repair her barn roof the following Sunday. Riding back to the ranch, Cole told himself he was simply fulfilling the role he'd agreed to play. Nothing more. But the lingering warmth of her smile stayed with him long after the cabin had disappeared from view. Over the next weeks, Cole fell into a pattern that increasingly revolved around Celia. Sundays were spent attending church, followed by work on her property. He repaired fences, helped prepare fields for planting, and completed the barn roof. Each time, Celia worked alongside him, proving her claims of capability were no exaggeration. "You're spending an awful lot of time in town lately," remarked Frank, an older cowhand, as they rode the fence line one afternoon. Cole kept his eyes on the wire they were stringing. "Just helping out a friend." "Friend, huh?" Frank chuckled. "Word is you're sweet on that Winters girl with the claim outside town." "It's not like that," Cole said automatically. "No? Then why are you smiling just thinking about her?" Cole touched his face, startled to find Frank was right. He schooled his expression back to neutrality. "We have an understanding, that's all." But even as he said it, Cole knew something had changed. He found himself looking forward to Sundays, to Celia's quick wit and determined spirit. The way she never complained, even when the work was hard. The gentle way she tended her garden in the evenings, humming softly to herself. The surprising sound of her laughter when he made a rare joke. One evening in late August, Cole arrived at Celia's cabin unexpected, bringing a repaired harness he'd promised to fix. He found her sitting on the porch, a letter clutched in her hands, tears streaming down her face. Cole was at her side before he could think. "What's happened?" Celia looked up, hastily wiping her tears. "Cole, I didn't expect you today." "The harness," he explained, suddenly awkward. But that doesn't matter. What's wrong? She sighed, holding up the letter. It's from the bank. They're refusing my loan application for seed and equipment. Without it, I can't develop the claim properly. Cole frowned. Did they give a reason? They claim a woman alone presents too great a risk, she said bitterly. Despite the fact that I've provided evidence of my previous farming experience and the viability of my plans. That's not right, Cole said, genuinely angered on her behalf. It's the way of things, Celia said, resignation heavy in her voice. A woman needs a husband to be taken seriously in business matters. Cole paced the small porch, thinking, we could use our engagement. I could co-sign. No, Celia interrupted firmly. I won't take advantage of your kindness that way. Our arrangement was to save my reputation, nothing more. She stood, straightening her shoulders. I'll find another way. Perhaps I can sell part of the claim. Let me help, Cole insisted. Not as your fiancé, but as your friend. Celia looked at him with surprise, then genuine gratitude. Friend, she repeated softly. Yes, I believe we are that now, aren't we? The realization struck Cole like a physical blow. Somewhere between their arranged engagement and this moment, he had indeed come to consider Celia a friend, perhaps the first real friend he'd allowed himself in years. I have some savings, he found himself saying. Not much, but enough to get you started with basic supplies. I couldn't possibly. It's an investment, Cole interrupted. In a promising agricultural enterprise. You can pay me back after your first harvest. Celia studied him, seeming to weigh his sincerity. As a business arrangement? Exactly, he agreed, though part of him recognized there was nothing purely businesslike in his motives. I'll draw up proper papers, she decided. With interest terms. Cole couldn't help but smile at her insistence on formality. Whatever you say, partner. That word, partner, hung between them, carrying weight neither had intended. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the evening light casting a golden glow over Celia's features. Cole had a sudden, overwhelming urge to brush away the strand of hair that had fallen across her cheek. Before he could act on the impulse, the distant sound of approaching riders broke the moment. Cole stepped back, irrationally grateful for the interruption of whatever had been building between them. 3 men on horseback approached the cabin. Cole recognized the center rider as Harold Whitman, owner of the large Double W ranch that bordered several smaller properties, including Celia's claim. Evening, Miss Winters, Whitman called, tipping his hat with exaggerated courtesy. And Mr. Weston, isn't it? One of Morton's hands from the rocking M. Cole nodded curtly, instantly alert to the calculating look in Whitman's eyes. What brings you out this way, Mr. Whitman? Celia asked, her tone polite but guarded. Just being neighborly, Whitman replied, dismounting. He was a large man in his 40s, expensively dressed and radiating the confidence of wealth and power. I heard the bank turned down your loan application. Celia stiffened beside Cole. News travels fast. Small towns, Whitman said with a shrug. I've come to make you an offer. That stream that runs along the eastern edge of your property continues onto my land. I've been wanting to develop that whole watershed area for some time. My claim isn't for sale, Celia said firmly. Whitman smiled indulgently. Miss Winters, be reasonable. You're a woman alone with no resources to develop this land properly. I'm offering fair market value. She said it's not for sale, Cole interjected, stepping slightly in front of Celia. Whitman's eyes narrowed. This is between me and the property owner, Cowboy. My fiancé has every right to speak on matters concerning our future, Celia said, moving to stand beside Cole. Her hand found his, and she squeezed it in silent communication. Fiancé. Whitman looked between them with new interest. I'd heard rumors, but, well, congratulations. When's the wedding? After fall roundup? Cole answered, the response now automatic. Whitman nodded thoughtfully. Well, my offer stands. Think about it, Miss Winters. The money could set you up nicely elsewhere, somewhere better suited to a young couple starting out. I appreciate your concern, Celia said coolly. But as I said, the claim isn't for sale. After Whitman and his men departed, Celia released Cole's hand and sank onto the porch step. He won't give up easily, she said. Father mentioned in his letters that Whitman had been pressuring him to sell too. Cole sat beside her. Why is this particular piece of land so important to him? There's plenty of open range around here. The water rights, Celia explained. This property controls access to the best water source for miles. In dry years, whoever owns this land could dictate terms to every rancher in the valley. Cole whistled softly. No wonder he's keen to buy you out. Now you see why I can't sell, Celia said. Father knew what he was doing when he filed this claim. He meant it as my security. As darkness fell, they sat together on the porch, discussing options for developing the claim without the bank's support. When Cole finally rode back to the ranch under a canopy of stars, he realized with startling clarity that for the first time in years, he was thinking beyond his own immediate concerns. He was invested in someone else's future, and that realization terrified him. September brought the start of Roundup, keeping Cole away from town for days at a time. When he did manage to visit Celia, he found her making remarkable progress on the claim despite limited resources. She had turned part of her garden yield into preserves to sell at the mercantile, using the small income to gradually acquire necessary equipment. You're full of surprises, Cole told her one evening as they sat on her porch, watching the sunset after a day spent digging irrigation channels. How so? Celia asked, passing him a cup of coffee. Most people would have given up after the bank refused the loan. You just found another way. Celia smiled. Father always said there's more than one path up the mountain. She hesitated, then added, I've been meaning to ask you something. What's that? When Roundup is finished, what are your plans? The question caught Cole off guard. According to their original agreement, after Roundup, they would announce the end of their engagement, and he would move on as planned. Yet somehow, in the weeks since that arrangement began, Cole had stopped thinking about leaving. I haven't decided, he admitted. I saved enough for a small stake, like I planned. I see. Celia stared into her coffee. Well, there's no rush to decide, I suppose. An uncomfortable silence fell between them. Cole found himself wanting to reassure her, to say he wasn't planning to leave, but the words wouldn't come. The idea of committing to stay, of admitting how much she had come to matter to him, felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown depths. Before he could sort through his conflicted thoughts, a rider approached at speed. It was young Tommy from the general store, his face flushed with exertion. Miss Winters. Mr. Weston, he called, reining in his horse. There's trouble in town. Someone set fire to the land office, and there's talk that all the recent claim records were destroyed. Celia gasped. My deed. That's not all. Tommy continued urgently. Marshall says there's been tampering with other records too. Some claims might be challenged if folks can't prove ownership. Cole was already on his feet. Celia, where's your deed? In my father's strongbox, she said, hurrying inside. She returned moments later, face pale. It's gone. The box is empty. Cole's mind raced. When did you last see it? A week ago, when I was organizing father's papers. Celia pressed a hand to her mouth. Someone's been in my home. The thought of an intruder in Celia's cabin, going through her belongings while she slept unprotected, sent a surge of protective fury through Cole. Pack a bag, he said decisively. You're not staying here alone tonight. But where? Mrs. Peterson at the boarding house will give you a room, Cole said. I'll speak to the marshal about the missing deed. As they rode toward town, Cole noticed Celia trembling slightly despite her efforts to appear calm. Without thinking, he reached across and placed his hand over hers on the saddle horn. We'll sort this out, he promised. Whoever's behind this won't get away with it. Celia looked at him with something like wonder. When did this become your fight too, Cole? The question struck him to the core, because he realized the answer with sudden, blinding clarity. Somewhere along the way, Celia's concerns had become his own. Her hopes, her struggles, her future, all of it mattered to him in a way nothing had for years. I'm not sure, he answered honestly. But it is. The town was in chaos when they arrived. The land office was still smoldering, and a crowd had gathered outside the marshal's office. Cole helped Celia secure a room at the boarding house before heading to join the gathering. Marshal Evans was addressing the crowd when Cole arrived. Folks, settle down. Yes, records were damaged, but the territorial office in Cheyenne has duplicates of most deeds. Anyone whose claim papers are missing should register with my deputy. What about claims filed in the last 6 months? Someone called out. Those records haven't been sent to Cheyenne yet. The marshal's grim expression confirmed the worst. Those will need to be verified through other means. Witnesses to the filing, bank records of purchase, that sort of thing. Cole pushed his way forward. Marshal, Miss Winters' deed has been stolen from her home. Her claim was filed by her father less than a year ago. Evans nodded. Several people have reported missing papers, Weston. Too many for it to be coincidence. Who benefits from this confusion? Cole pressed. That's what I aim to find out, Evans replied, though his tone lacked conviction. As the crowd dispersed, Cole noticed Harold Whitman standing with the banker, both men looking remarkably unconcerned by the chaos around them. When Whitman caught Cole watching, he smiled and tipped his hat in mocking salute. The next morning, Cole arrived at the boarding house to escort Celia to breakfast, only to find her in conversation with Whitman in the parlor. "Ah, Weston, good morning." Whitman greeted him with false joviality. "I was just expressing my sympathies to Miss Winters about her documentation troubles." "How thoughtful," Cole replied coldly. "Celia, are you ready to go?" "Mr. Whitman has kindly offered to purchase my claim despite the current confusion," Celia explained, her expression carefully neutral. "At a reduced price, of course, given the circumstances." Cole clenched his jaw. "Has he?" "It seems the most practical solution," Whitman said smoothly. "Without clear title, Miss Winters could face lengthy legal challenges. My lawyers are confident they could establish my right to the land through prior water usage rights." "That's nonsense and you know it," Cole snapped. Whitman's pleasant facade didn't slip. "Business is business, Weston. Miss Winters should consider her options carefully. My offer won't remain open indefinitely." He bowed slightly to Celia. "Think about it, my dear. No need to struggle alone when there's an easy solution at hand." After Whitman departed, Cole turned to Celia. "You're not considering his offer, are you?" "Of course not," she said, indignation flashing in her eyes. "But I wanted to hear what he had to say. The more he talks, the more convinced I am that he's behind all this." Cole ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Proving it is another matter. Men like Whitman have money and influence." "Then we'll need to be smarter than he is," Celia said with determination. "I need to establish my claim through other means. Father corresponded with several people about the property before purchasing it. If I can track down those letters, I'll help," Cole said without hesitation. "But first, you need to be somewhere safe. Whitman clearly isn't above breaking into your cabin. What if you'd been home when his men came for the deed?" The thought had clearly occurred to Celia as well, from the way her expression darkened. "I can't hide at the boarding house forever. Besides, I need to tend to the land." "Stay at the ranch," Cole suggested impulsively. "The foreman's wife has a spare room, and no one would dare trespass on Rockingham property." "Cole, I can't impose. It's not an imposition," he insisted. "Just until we sort this out. Please, Celia." Something in his tone must have conveyed his genuine concern, because after a moment, Celia nodded. "All right, but only for a few days, and I'll need to visit my claim daily." "I'll escort you myself," Cole promised, relief flooding through him. That evening, as Cole rode alongside the wagon carrying Celia and her few belongings to the Rockingham, he found himself watching her profile in the fading light. She sat straight back despite the day's troubles, her expression determined rather than defeated. In that moment, Cole realized with startling clarity that the belief he'd clung to for years, that attachment only led to pain, was crumbling in the face of a greater truth. Some connections were worth the risk. The thought terrified him almost as much as it exhilarated him. October arrived with a chill in the air and increasing tension in the valley. While Celia stayed safely at the Rockingham, Cole divided his time between roundup duties and investigating the land office fire. Several smaller claim holders had already sold to Whitman under pressure, unable to prove ownership without their missing deeds. "He's systematically taking over the valley," Celia observed one evening as she and Cole pored over a rough map spread on the ranch house table. Mrs. Morton, the foreman's wife, had gone to bed, leaving them alone in the warm kitchen. "Look at the pattern. Every property he's acquired controls water access." Cole nodded grimly. "And your claim is the linchpin. Without it, his water monopoly isn't complete." Celia traced the stream that ran through her property with her finger. "Father understood the value of this land. That's why he was so insistent I keep it, no matter what." She looked up at Cole, determination in her eyes. "I won't let Whitman steal what's rightfully mine." "We'll find a way to prove your ownership," Cole assured her. He hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking. Even after we establish your claim, Whitman won't stop trying to force you out." "Probably not," Celia agreed. "But what choice do I have?" Cole took a deep breath. We could make the engagement real. Celia went very still. What? Married women have more legal protections than single women. Cole explained hastily, though his racing heart had little to do with legal considerations. And Whitman would think twice about intimidating a woman with a husband. Is that the only reason you're suggesting this? Celia asked quietly. Cole looked at her across the table, at the woman who had somehow slipped past all his defenses. The woman whose courage, determination, and gentle heart had changed everything he thought he knew about what he wanted. No, he admitted. That's not the only reason. Celia's eyes searched his face. Cole, I won't have you propose out of pity or obligation. Pity? Celia? Cole struggled to find the right words. I never planned to stay in one place. Never wanted to. But now I can't imagine leaving. Not because of the land or Whitman or any of that. Because of you. A soft gasp escaped her, barely audible in the quiet kitchen. Cole continued, the words coming faster now. I thought caring for someone was a weakness out here. Something to avoid. But being with you these past months has shown me how wrong I was. You're the strongest person I know, and you've made me stronger too, not weaker. Cole, Celia whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Before he could say more, the door burst open, and Josh, one of the younger ranch hands, stumbled in. Cole, there's a fire. Miss Winters' cabin. It's burning. They reached the claim to find Celia's cabin engulfed in flames. Several townspeople had formed a bucket line from the stream, but their efforts seemed futile against the roaring blaze. Who did this? Cole demanded, dismounting beside Marshal Evans, who stood watching the firefighting efforts. No witnesses, Evans said grimly. But it's clearly deliberate. Fire was set in multiple locations. Cole looked to Celia, expecting to find her devastated by the destruction of her home. Instead, her expression was one of cold fury as she stared at the burning structure. He thinks this will make me give up, she said, her voice steady despite the tears tracking down her soot-stained cheeks. He's wrong. Dawn revealed the full extent of the damage. The cabin was a charred ruin, the barn partially burned. Only the distance from the main structure had saved it from complete destruction. As they surveyed the wreckage, Tommy from the general store rode up, waving excitedly. Miss Winters, Mr. Weston, you need to see this. He handed Celia a telegram. She read it quickly, her expression transforming from despair to hope. It's from my father's solicitor in Laramie. He has copies of all the claim paperwork. He can verify my ownership. Cole felt a weight lift from his shoulders. That's excellent news. There's more, Tommy added eagerly. Marshall found something in the ruins of the land office that survived the fire. A ledger showing payments made for certain services. One entry mentioned document retrieval paid for by H.W. Harold Whitman, Cole said. Exactly. Marshall's gone to the Double W with a warrant right now. Relief washed over Celia's face, followed quickly by determination as she surveyed her damaged property. Even with the paperwork sorted and Whitman exposed, there's still so much to rebuild. Cole looked at the burned cabin, then at the woman who had somehow become the center of his world. We can rebuild it. Together. Celia turned to him, searching his face. Cole, what are you saying? I'm saying I love you, he said simply, the words feeling natural and true. I'm saying I want to build a life with you. Here, if you'll have me. But your plans, your independence. None of that matters anymore, Cole said, taking her hands in his. I thought I needed freedom from attachment to be happy. I was wrong. What I need, what I want is you. Tears spilled down Celia's cheeks. I love you too, Cole. I have for months now. But I didn't want to trap you into something you didn't truly want. Cole brushed away her tears with gentle fingers. The only trap was the one I built around my own heart. You've set me free from it. As the morning sun rose higher, casting golden light across the damaged claim, Cole pulled Celia into his arms and kissed her, not as part of their pretend engagement, but as a promise of the very real future they would build together. 2 months later, on a crisp December morning, Cole stood beside Celia in the newly constructed church of Sweetwater Springs. The building was filled with townspeople and ranch hands, all gathered to witness the union that had begun as a convenient fiction and blossomed into profound love. Do you, Cole Weston, take Celia Winters to be your lawfully wedded wife? Asked the minister. Cole looked at Celia, radiant in a simple white dress, her green eyes shining with happiness. "I do," he said, his voice steady and sure. When Celia echoed those words, Cole felt the last of his old beliefs fall away. The frontier wasn't a place where love couldn't survive. It was a place where love was most needed, where sharing burdens and joys made the harsh realities bearable, even beautiful. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, the congregation erupted in cheers. Cole and Celia turned to face their community, hands clasped tightly together. Outside, the winter sun sparkled on fresh snow covering the valley. In the distance, the frame of their new home rose on Celia's claim, larger and sturdier than the original cabin, built by Cole's hands with help from friends from town and the rocking M. "Mrs. Weston," Cole said softly as they stepped into the bright winter day. "How does it sound?" "Perfect," Celia replied, smiling up at him. "Though you should know I still intend to prove myself as a rancher and farmer." Cole laughed. "I wouldn't have it any other way. We're partners in every sense, remember?" As they climbed into the decorated wagon that would carry them to their wedding celebration, Cole marveled at how completely his life had transformed. 6 months ago, he had been a drifter, convinced that avoiding attachment was the key to surviving the frontier. Now he understood the truth. It wasn't about surviving alone, but about thriving together. He had offered Celia his name to save her reputation, never imagining that in doing so, he would find not just love, but home. Not just a partner, but a future brighter than any he had dared to dream. As they drove toward their new beginning, the Wyoming wilderness stretched out around them, no longer a place of isolation and loss, but the setting for their shared story, the foundation of their enduring love.